That's a 1994 moment. That's an internet moment all over again, except it's faster. And we're having to let go of what we know to
What was that
continuously
date?
read
ChatGPT?
ChatGPT. Yeah, November 30th, 2022. And I was just working with a group of 19 credit union leaders and I asked them to raise their hands. How many of you have never played with ChatGPT? 95% raised their hands. And I get it and I understand it.
Not even played with it. Not even tell me a joke.
Logged into it, nothing. And I'm very empathetic to that fact because like the work that I do within financial services, it's a completely different world. It's a completely different mindset. But the most important technology, people are asking, James Robert, what's the most important technology I can learn right now? Well, it's not AI, it's not automation, and it's not data. The number one technology you can master right now in the age of AI is the technology that sits between your ears.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's how we're going to either react or respond to exponential change. And if you think about technology is increasing at an exponential pace, and it has been, and now the multiplier is going to get even faster with AI and machine learning and large language models. You have this curve, this exponential curve. The problem is we are linear thinkers.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way that we perceive the world on a linear plane, you have the exponential curve of technology, you have the linear thinker of our own minds that's creating a gap. And the gap's going to get bigger. The only thing that we can do is let go of what we know to continuously relearn and reinvent ourselves at a much faster iteration, which is easy in theory. It's hard in practice, but I truly believe it cannot be done alone. Community is needed for this. Yeah.
Yes. Welcome to OnSolos. Today I'm joined by James Robert Lay. James Robert is one of the world's leading digital marketing authors, speakers, and advisors for financial brands. As the founder and CEO of the Digital Growth Institute, he's on a mission to inspire human transformation through education and coaching by empowering financial brands to level up loan and deposit growth. James Robert wrote the best-selling book, Banking on Digital Growth, and the Banking on Digital Growth podcast is the podcast he hosts. His insights have been featured in outlets including U.S. News and World Report and the Financial Brand. James Robert, my friend, welcome.
Joe, it's great to hang out with you again, buddy. It's been too long.
It has, man. It's always a casual conversation, a formal introduction, just right into a regular talk here.
It is for sure. And thinking about everything where we could take this conversation, you lead the way because when we're talking, we can go down many rabbit holes together.
Yeah, for sure, man. So what's interesting right now is this is one of my earlier podcasts and I have a bookshelf, but you're on my podcast, by the way. So people don't know, James Robert is on the OnSolos podcast. I'm here as a solo with a bookshelf and plants, and he's in, I think the studios for, I don't know, a major news network, like what is the Sports Center? Is that where you're at? Where are you at?
No, I'm just in my office in Houston, and we've been building this podcast studio out now over the past couple of years, and it started very similar to with what you had. In fact, it was with Gray McKinney that I was on his show in 2019. And he said, what's going to happen? Like, it was in January. He said, what's the big thing? And I was literally, it looked like your setup. He said, what's the big thing that's going to happen for you this year? I said, this is the year that I write the book. And so 2019 to 2023, 4 years later, we now have 4 cameras, video switcher. It's a whole thing, but I started just like you. I think that's the most important thing when we're talking about like solopreneurship. Just start. Don't try to go big. And even when I started this podcast, I thought I was going to do video from the get-go and audio. No, you just start small and you continuously build upon the capabilities that you gain over time.
Yeah, that's good advice. And I think many solos, at least myself, and I know a lot of solos, I was talking about the personality of solos the other day with someone. And it was interesting because a lot of solos, we have this unfocused kind of energy and we want to get into things, but we want to do them like grand. So I remember when I was starting off looking at podcasts, you came up on LinkedIn. I saw what you were doing. You're a good friend of mine. I'm like, wow, that's intense. Maybe I need something like that. I'm like, wait, I can't even try that. Let me start small. And I did. I went back and I don't think I looked at an old Joe Rogan podcast. I think I fell asleep to a recent one and it went back to one of his first ones. And this is the guy, he's King Kong of podcasting. If you look at his first one, it's funny. It's no big deal. He's like, how do you work this thing? But he's doing it live in real time, letting people learn, and years ago.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, if this guy started his podcast out this way, then this is plenty good. Let me learn to do it. And we'll bring all types of people on. And you're one of them who's done a lot of episodes of your own, and someone that a lot of people who are solos who might be even thinking about doing podcasts can learn from. And it's a nice community to have a group of solos where everyone can learn from each other.
Absolutely.
And I'm learning here as I go along from you.
And I think that's the key is when we're going through an experience like this, particularly as a solo, many times we think that we're the only ones who are doing what we're doing. But if we just put our head up, we look around like you did, you saw on LinkedIn, look at what he's doing. But be very careful, because comparison can be a killer. It can be a killer to, I can never do that. And I think, no, yes, you can do that, but just give yourself the grace, give yourself the time, give yourself the runway to create that over time. And time is probably one of the most unique things I've been thinking about lately, because when we think about the context of time, particularly in this world that we're living in now, I think many people frame time as, how are you spending your time? And I think that's the wrong way to approach time. Time can be looked at as an investment. So the better question is, how are you investing your time?
Yeah.
Because we're having this conversation is then going to get multiplied and then distributed to go and create value for other people. That's an investment of time. That's not spending. Energy is something you spend because energy is finite. Time can be a multiplier now with all of the capabilities that we have, particularly like with digital podcasting, et cetera.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's a great way of looking at it. And I think when I first heard investment in time, I started to think as well, not only are we investing in getting that learning out there to others and learning together, but we're also investing in building up our own set of expertise or new sets of expertise, or leveraging prior sets of expertise and repurposing them. Like
Yes.
I'd probably been on 1,000, or well, at least more than 1,000 sales calls over the years, thousands of sales calls over the years. And a lot of them have been on Zoom, been using Zoom for a long time, and some of them been recorded on Zoom, and some of them been shared back with a prospect on Zoom. And I've had some interesting conversations along the way. I should be okay at podcasting, at least enough to start. So then you might interview on someone's podcast here or there and go, oh, I did that. Okay, maybe I could start my own. But no, I'm not going to be. I had to realize it wasn't going to be so polished and so amazing right off the bat, that it was just going to be, let's go see if we could do this. And do I like doing it? And what's the feedback I'm getting? Are people saying this was fun? Is it of value? And okay, it's decent. This is something I want to keep doing and keep working on. Let's see where it goes. And as I've come in and had great people to interview like yourself, I'm learning like, yeah, we're learning a lot from each other. So not just the podcast, but we've had great conversations on here that it's just been a great way to catch up with people, but it's a conversation everyone can listen to and other people can join. And I think that's the key to community as well.
Yes, it is, because it's a mutual exchange of knowledge. It's a mutual exchange of energy. And I think when you look at this idea of knowledge, the world that we're living in, where knowledge has the potential to become quote unquote commoditized because of things like ChatGPT. The human experience, I predict, has the potential to create even more valuable than what you can get from a ChatGPT experience, because your perception of the world, and I look at perception as the sum of context and framing. So how you have perceived your own life's experience, your own professional experience. I have my life, personal, professional experience. But when you bring those two together, you're creating an entirely new experience that we're both going to be walking away from, that you just don't go and plug into ChatGPT and get the answer. So I think there's something far more valuable by investing time to have these conversations and then multiply them out into the world, because someone who then joins in, if you will, to this experience as passively by listening, they're going to walk away with a whole new set of lenses that they're going to take going forward in their own journeys of growth.
Yeah, I think I follow you. This is a problem. I'm a tech hacker like yourself, where I go into early technologies and see, what's this about? What's AI about? And one of the things I was messing with ChatGPT was like, what's this thing's version of reality? And it started getting me into consciousness, human consciousness. I started reading about psychology, and I'm like, large language. Wait a second. Language is my expression of my
Yes.
experienced reality. ChatGPT is never going to be able to explain reality to me. Reality is a perspective. I have a reality, you have a reality, we have a shared reality. ChatGPT will never join that together. It never will be able to piece that together. It just won't, unless it's a series of ChatGPTs, I think, and that will be really weird because it's not experiencing life. So you're going to need people. Like we're aggregating this thing in a way, and I think it's going to have its limitations, at least in the near term. That
Yeah.
we as humans, it's just a lot different because you're James, I'm Joe. ChatGPT is ChatGPT. It's a thing. It's a one perspective, and we can take in information just like it could and spit it back, but we still have our perspective. I don't think it's going to be able to have a singular experience where all of those inputs line up. And that's a deep philosophical conversation, but it's one that I've been wrestling with, and I'm open to a challenge on it from all the experts out there. I haven't heard a lot of discussions on it, but I haven't been that deep in those circles, but I do find it to be an impersonal experience. So I think that's why it can assist us, but it can't really experience like for all of us. It can't add to our experience. It can't make my experience better.
It is very philosophical, and it's one that I have been thinking about a lot lately myself because as we're moving forward into this age of AI, I feel like it is a new era. It's going to make the internet seem like kind of kids' play of what we've experienced here. And it's going to require us to gain new perspective at a much faster pace. So the
Yes.
idea of philosophy and psychology and sociology and anthropology, I think these are very important schools of thought to really learn and to really ponder, particularly as a solopreneur. No matter what it is that you do, what you do is just one element. And I've been telling a lot of people through my lens of the world in financial services with bank and credit union leaders that what you do is probably the most dangerous thing to attach to, because think about like attachment theory, like we attach our identity to what we do as a solopreneur. That's
Yes.
dangerous because what we do has the potential now to be truly disrupted at a much faster pace. I think about my own journey. I started building websites in 2001, 2002.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that anymore. You can literally go to ChatGPT and ask it to build a website for you and give you the code and everything. And so it's completely mind boggling because it's only been really, the internet came out in 1994. Okay. We're moving into 2024. That's 30 years. That's not that long to see everything that has evolved. Bezos launched Amazon July 5th, 1994. Online banking, May 18th, 1995. And then you see this like series of events. Then you go from, we're going to flash forward to 99. That was Napster. Napster enters into
Yeah.
the scene. That was one of my very first entrepreneurial journeys, was selling
Yeah.
bootleg CDs. Kids were
Awesome.
cool. And then you got the rise of Airbnb, you got the rise of Uber. So you have this like digitization path that, and Peter Diamandis has written prolifically about this. He calls them the 6 Ds, but things get digitized, they get democratized, they get decentralized, they get demonetized. But it also gives solos the ability to leverage technologies to have a much larger reach, amplification, connection, community, literally globally now, that we can create exponentially more value than what we could have, say, maybe even 5 or 10 years ago, because the world is just a different place today.
I believe, like to that rate, as much as the current internet has allowed people to niche and find their tribe, so to speak, it's enabled some two-way communication. But I think more than anything, since we are global and since it's going to break language barriers and everything else, AI, and enable us to do things quicker and introduce ourselves to the world and other people quicker, I think it will create a global audience and a more niche audience and allow us to experience the many aspects of ourselves with others. Because we're not just solos. We might be solos with an interest in banking. We might be solos with an interest in something else. Podcasting, right? We might be solos with interest in writing books. We might be solos in all the above, which you are. But you might find those connections in different communities that I think AI is going to make people more findable and assist us in understanding our context in what we search for. I think that you're seeing that with Chat GPT as related to Google, ChatGPT understands the context of what you're asking and replies it with a more personalized answer for you than Google would.
Yes.
Google just gives you, here are the top 10 results that people, the aggregate tends to ask. But I understand what you're asking as ChatGPT. I get what you're saying. You want me to tell you what it is exactly about this thing from the perspective you're intimating here, and you want it explained in a haiku. No, but it like actually knows, like you can actually say, explain to me as if I'm a rocket scientist. Explain to me like I'm 6 years old. Make it simple, make it hard, like whatever. It will do that when you ask it, and Google just doesn't do that. So
there's that contextual lens right there that,
yeah.
oh, and I think that's an interesting thing too, being a solo today and not, and being a solo, say pre November 30th, 2022, is you now as a solo, you have a new teammate. You have a collaborator that you can spar and go back and forth with. Is it human consciousness? No. But is it something that you can gain some perspective from previous experiences that have been added to the large language model?
Yeah.
Yes. And I think that's where it's been fascinating. Think about like the work that we're doing with our podcast. Our entire podcast process has been evolving at a rapid exponential pace over the last 6 months because we are using ChatGPT for titling, for show notes, for LinkedIn posts, for YouTube comment. It is really become an extension, if you will, of a small team here that would have taken, say, a writer or some other capability. And and what is that for us? It's just requiring us to rethink how we think and what we perceived before as possible to now there's a whole new set of possibilities, and we have to let go of what we know to then reach that new possibility.
That's awesome. And I think that makes going solo in a new context. You might only need a small team or go solo when you might have thought to have 10 people before. So there might be just not how you still retain that lifestyle business. You still retain some of that exhaustion you can have from people management and just going against operating in a world where it has a lot of larger competitors and people who can undercut. It is very difficult to run a small team business. There's a lot of volatility points where labor market volatility, inflow of work, sales volatility, you have multiple functional areas, and it's very hard to manage the balance of all of that, even with a small team. Scale is impersonal and you lose some of that craftsmanship with it. But what you gain is smoothing out the volatility in operations, which is very challenging. So I think a lot of us with small teams, when we're in that game, we do get that craftsmanship. People would still go to you when you had that team where there was more people on it, and you were still able to have your impact. They'd be able to access the owner. They'd be able to access the person who was the original visionary. Of course, the team brings the vision in, but you were the original visionary. And as a small business, up to 10 people, 10, 20, you have it. When you're accessible, you're still there. Your heart and soul can still go into the work, but good luck keeping up on all the aspects of the business and having it smooth. It's very hard to keep all of that going because we're not in a world that is conducive to that kind of retention. You can kid yourself that you're going to be the world's greatest at it, but that's just the market. That's life. You're not going to have that. Going solo is great because you could still have that bandwidth and not have to worry about all that volatility in all those areas. So it's not like you have to limit your dreams as much either on what you're able to do and how many people you're able to help and who you're able to help.
And it's the idea of collaboration too, because solos now have the ability to connect and collaborate to create new opportunities, to create value. And I think if we come back to like at the end of the day, how do we get paid? I'm a big believer it's in value creation, and value creation going forward might be just seeing things from a different perspective, seeing things from a different lens. And for me personally, I think from my own experience, pre 2012, when I had a larger team and I was having to deal with the people issues and whatnot, it was taking my ability away to see things and then to be creative, because I was more of just solving the same old problems that are rooted in humanity. Now it's, you know what? We can spin teams up and we can spin teams down. And it's It's very exciting. It's very energizing, particularly as I believe, we'll continue to see a rise of solopreneurship. And that creates freedom in whole new ways, in whole new aspects. I think about freedom. I think about this idea of wellness coming from
Yes.
the banking. I call them the six dimensions of wealth and well-being. You have, and they're all in ranked order. You have spiritual well-being. You have mental or emotional well-being. You have physical well-being, you have relational well-being, you have professional well-being, and then you have financial well-being.
Yeah.
And when you create that rank order of wellness, if you will, because I need to think of my own personal journey, I was so focused on the financial side of things that every other one of those elements was tanking, garbage. But whenever I started to put the priority on spiritual well being and mental and emotional well being and physical, taking care of my health, physical health, on relational, like my family, my kids, my wife, the people that I collaborate with, that then improves my professional well-being. And then as a result, my financial well-being is just, it continues to improve because of that. So I think that's a different way of thinking about the world.
Yeah. And it all builds on itself. But conversely, when one of those things isn't working, it all collapses.
They all fall apart.
They all fall
Yes.
apart like the spinning plates fall. And it's really hard to pick those suckers up, glue them back together and get them to spin again.
Mhm.
And I've been there. It's not a fun place. And it happens with solos a lot. And we struggle with very small business and solopreneurs. We struggle to find that connection because the people in our life aren't in a solo world. They're just not. The people at home and others, they might go, why are you doing this? Or this is, why don't you get a job? Or why don't you take that client? What, that client's going to pay a lot, but you're like, no, that's not a fit. That might hurt my spiritual well-being, which will hurt my emotional well-being, which will hurt my physical well-being, which will ultimately
Yes.
hurt my relationship with my family. And
Mhm.
that happens. And that's one of the things you've spoken about is like
Yes.
that dynamic.
And
It's happened to me.
it's being aware as a solopreneur of where you are. And once again, that requires you to just break free from what you're doing. And so I'm working on my second book right now, and it's titled Banking on Change. And the subtitle is How to Achieve Exponential Growth in the Age of AI. And exponential growth is what I'm defining as where one has the perception that they're growing personally and professionally at the same exact time. I think a lot of us, if I look back at history and conversations that I've had, and even I was like, okay, I got to go all in professionally, but I'm going to suffer personally, or I'm going to take care of my personal life and then my professional life. I'm like, that's a lie. Like we have been sold a lie and we bought a lie because we were the ones who accepted it. I was like, no,
Yeah.
we can do both at the same exact time.
Right.
But it comes down to really breaking free from the doing to review what you've done, to learn through the process, to then think, and doing that at least at a minimum once every 90 days. I'm a
Oh
big
yeah.
believer in the 90-day growth methodology.
Yeah, that's wise words. And that's like once every quarter, right? If everyone who
Yes.
wants to talk about business, just like your quarterly plan, I think that works for businesses. You have quarterly plans, you have your quarterly plan and review with yourself.
Mhm.
It's the way to do it. Now, I have not done that. I'm going to probably take your advice and run with that. I don't know if there's a formal process for that, but
You want to give it to you? I'll make it's super easy
yeah,
because once
sure.
again, when you have ADD, you have to create these little mind hacks
Yeah.
to remember things, and acronyms run wild in digital growth topia. So here's how you do this, and you ask yourself, Joe, what's been going well? What's been going well for you? And is an acronym for where have you been winning? So look back over the last 90 days. Look back over
Yeah.
the last month. Look back over the last week. Look back over the last day.
Right.
Because this what's going well methodology is it's like a utility tool because you can use it on a monthly basis, a daily basis, a weekly basis, a quarterly basis, an annual basis. What have been the biggest wins you've experienced over the last 90 days? Write those down and set a timer. 3 minutes,
Yeah.
just download your mind. Second,
Mm,
that's the past. Second, let's move to the present. What are you feeling excited and energized about right now in the present moment? 3 minutes, thinking right. Download that. Okay, great. Let's do a little bit of past and present. Think about the last 90 days. What have been the biggest lessons that you've learned along your own journey of growth,
yeah.
personally or professionally, or both? Another 3 minutes, write that down. And then finally, and this is the fun part, what are you looking forward to over the next 90 days? What are you going to do? What's that North Star, that compass that's going to guide you to your future self, essentially? Because I think if we don't create that space to think about the future and think about the future self,
Oh yeah.
the past becomes, or the future becomes the predictable past based upon the decisions that we're making right now in the present moment. So winning, exciting, learning, looking is
Winning,
like
excited, learning, and looking. I'm going to say it one more time for myself. Winning,
winning,
exciting, learning,
learning,
looking. Got it.
and if you have kids, do this with your kids. I've been doing this with my
Yeah.
kids, and it has truly changed their perspective because
Oh yeah.
you talk about psychology, the mind can only hold a positive or a negative thought. In what you're doing, particularly if you're focused on your wins, you're always looking for the good, even in challenging situations. What do you talk about when you're thinking about what are you excited and energized? You might feel like you're stuck in the gap right now. You're griping about problems. When you're thinking about what's exciting you and what's energizing you, that's going to quickly pull you out of griping about problems and make you growth bound once again. What are you learning? How often are we going through life and not really reflecting on the big lessons, the big insights that we've learned and why they're
Yeah.
important, how we can apply them going forward? And then most importantly, once again, I think in a world for many that feels very confusing and chaotic
Yep.
because of exponential change, we as solopreneurs have the ability to give people help and to give people hope because
Yes.
we don't have that weight and baggage that others might have in a corporate environment, but we are collaborating with them. We are creating value. So you're essentially able to be the light to them and
Yeah.
find light and darkness. And that's where the only way that can happen is if you perceive your own future is bigger than where you've been in the past.
I love that. You're reading my mind. I was about to say this this beautiful. I was about to say the beauty in all of this solo stuff you're talking about. How does that relate back to your clients who are typically in the corporation? I think you just said it. You're bringing that light into their world. And
Yes.
that's inspiring. And I've seen that with clients. I've seen the ability to do that as a smaller group to come in and say, let's think a little differently. Tell me about how you're doing that in the banking industry, which is corporate, which people, I don't want to, I'm thinking, should I just say it? But when I hear banking and corporate, where I'm at in Delaware, it's the like credit card capital of the world, and you think banking corporate, whoa, that's about as corporate as it gets.
Yeah.
Shine a light there. Tell me about your experiences and what I might be missing in an initial bias there and thinking like, oh, how do you shine a light in an environment that is so traditional? How does it work?
No, your bias is completely founded because we know I'm working with people outside of the vertical, we do a lot of digital secret shopping studies on bank and credit union websites. It's become one of our core offerings because it does provide a light. It does provide perspective and it's objective. It's not my opinion. This is the opinion of the marketplace. This is the opinion of people who are visiting a financial brand's website. And how does it make them feel? Does it make them feel confused? Does it make them feel frustrated? Does it make them feel overwhelmed? Which a lot of that, there is not an inherent bias, but there's an inherently high cognitive load already associated with money and finances. And the visual communication patterns of, say, a website will either increase that cognitive load or do everything possible to reduce that cognitive load. Coming back to the idea of words and language, it makes a really big difference of how people perceive that. And so when working with some of these financial brand teams, oh, we've never thought about that. I guess my entire goal is, in my purpose is what I call 1BX BTR. And that is to get 1 billion people beyond financial stress to a bigger, better, brighter future. And here's why. 85% of Americans feel financial stress or financial anxiety. And there's a bit of a difference. I learned this from Dr. Megan McCoy, who runs the Financial Therapy Association. Financial stress is when you're stressed out. I don't know if I'm going to get food on the table. Financial anxiety, though, is when you have this anxiety that really is taking a toll on your mental, physical, relational, spiritual well-being. And so I'm working with some of these financial brand leaders to get them to think a little bit differently about the work that they're doing, to not think of this as just transaction dollars and cents, but to
Oh,
really put the transformation of people over the commoditized transaction. Because if you think about this financial health crisis that we're in, and you go to Google and you type in what is the number one cause of stress, it is money. And
all
so
right.
if you want to get people financially healthy, stop trying to transform their wallet, transform their mind and mindset, because the relationship that we have with money goes all the way back to our early childhoods, our family of origins, the environments that we grew up with. I've had to do a lot of work on myself with this. And what I've seen though, for the organizations that commit to go down this path, they commit to go down this journey, they become the light,
Yeah.
the communities that they're serving. And everyone gets better together because of that. A rising tide lifts all ships.
That is awesome, because that's one of the things you feel great about coming to work every day when you're helping people. I remember we got to a point with our business, it was like, geez, like what kind of clients are we taking on? We had this one thing. We want to take on clients who are helping the helpers. We want to take on clients who are in healthcare, who are in charities. And that was a transition we made right before COVID. And interestingly enough, not saying our clients were doing this, but you can even see in these helping communities, not banking's traditional business, but in healthcare and other groups, you can see, oh, people in those businesses could be, I need to be more businessy. I need to be more dollars and cents. And you actually see the love just taken out of these businesses. And maybe there's a business leader, a managing director at one of these places who's pushing his caring team into being very focused on the next metric. But the metric's not client happiness or success. It might be to obtain a sponsorship or something like that, rather than how many well people are we creating? These
Yes.
things happen out there. Now in banking, to actually say, oh, we're going to flip the tables on this. When people have financial stress, they have health problems. They have long-term problems. When people have financial stress, they have marital problems. And now you're empowering the person in the bank and the teams in the bank and the marketing teams in the bank to now be helpers, not to be, oh, the bank called. No, the bank called and we're going to have access to capital. We're going to get our financial lives in order. And the bank and their team is now an ally of me empowering my life. That's powerful. That is really very powerful.
When you read my bio introduction, it is about leveling up loans and deposits. But the only way you can, that I see going forward into this future, when almost every vertical is commoditized, to level up loans and deposits, you level up loans and deposits by leveling up the lives of people and businesses in the communities that you serve.
That is amazing. And I think that's coming out of the COVID era where we've all been very far apart.
Yeah.
I think people are looking for more connection, just whether you're in a corporation, whether you're solo, no matter where you're at right now, you're looking for more connection right now. And
Absolutely.
I think that leveling up is the way people are looking at things right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Is this going to be in the outtake of the quiet moments? Should we publish this? I told
Yeah.
my daughter, I said, I want you to take dad's awkward moments and just put them out there like one of the YouTubers, like these kids who do it, and put some sound effects on it.
No,
Getting married to that? Do I have permission?
no, I just was thinking, when we look at this idea of coming out of the COVID era, there's a DJ. He's an EDM DJ out of the Netherlands,
Nice.
Armin van Buren. And when I was running some marathons a couple of years ago, I was listening to one of his albums over and over again on these long runs. And one of the lyrics was, everyone's connected, but no one is connected. The human element has long been missing. And I think it's, as a solo, you have the ability to inject the human element into whatever it is that you're doing, because it is you doing that. So you can add some humanity back, because we're not ones and zeros. Behind every data point is DNA. And if we remember that, we all get a little bit better together.
And on that note, I'm going to end our conversation, and I want to have you back on Solos podcasting, and you are doing good things for the world in a space. I think it was one of the modern philosophers. I can't remember who it was. I think it was Ram Dass. I was watching YouTube one day, and they said, why are you still in the working world? Why are you still in the medical world doing what you do? And the medical world doesn't always do the greatest things. And like he goes, I want to put myself in that system. I want to be the place that needs change to inspire the change. And I see you doing that in banking, and I see you just bringing a lot of joy. And I think that's a great thing to do. And I'm so glad to hear that's what you're working on these days. And it's just amazing. And I think it's going to inspire a lot of people.
I appreciate it, Joe. It's great sharing time with you as always.
Yeah, brother. Thanks again.
As always, be well, do good, be the light, buddy.
All right, Paul.